So, you want to play your Atari 2600 on the modern good old age of 2024. How do you do it? Because this thing has to use the most outdated shit ever. Well, you'd be surprised. So let's get on with the tutorial. So you shouldn't have any problems plugging in anything related to the Atari 2600. Except for one thing. That being this component. The component to actually plug this fucking thing into here. So what do you do with this? Well, of course you could just buy an adapter for it. Now, what if you want the actual authentic experience? Like, you don't want to use this fuck-ass adapter. No, you want to use the piece of shit box it came with. Well, this is how you do it. So, ditch this thing in the fucking trash. And take your plug-in and plug this bad boy right into here. Now, once it's plugged into here, we can actually explain what this other shit is. So the first thing you have is a slider from game to TV. So, you don't have to constantly keep unscrewing these devil's pitchforks just so you could watch goddamn TV, if any TV channels actually supported it anymore. So just switch that bitch to game. And now we got to explain these. Now you have two plugins right here. You have one that looks like a typical coaxial cable, and the other which looks like the devil's fucking pitchforks. And they are labeled. So you have VHF, that's the coaxial cable you're going to use, and UHF. I'm telling you right now, we're not going to use UHF because, again, most TVs don't have support for these anymore. But some, surprisingly, still do have support for this. Fuck, even the TV right behind us has support for coaxial, even though it's pretty outdated. Now, what if your TV doesn't have coaxial? Well, you're going to have to bust out this cheap piece of shit. This is the VCR that I use for only $12. Yep, VCRs are pretty cheap if you buy them at a Goodwill. And there should be a port on the back, which is going to be kind of hard to show you. You should have two back here. This bottom one is the output, which is the coaxial I use to actually see on the TV, and the top is the input, as you can see right here. Now, it could differ from model to model, but there should always be an output and an input, even if the output is AV, like right here. Sorry for the very scuffed angle, but I want to show you all screwing this bad boy in. So you want to take your coaxial cable and you want to plug it into there. Just plug her in, baby. Now, the thing with coaxial cables is you actually have to screw them in with your fingers. There you go. Make sure it's actually in there. Yeah, it's in there. And again, make sure it's switched to game, not TV. TV's the bottom, game's the top. Now you have to turn this piece of shit on. Now with this specific model of VCR, even if there is a completely blank disc put in there or there's no tape in there whatsoever, it will not boot up to the menu, which you're going to have to use. So, to get that to play, put in like a blank VHS tape or an actual VHS tape in there and click play. And once you know that it's actually playing it, immediately press stop. Now looking at the Atari 2600, you want to move it around. Here, let me move this back. You're going to move your Atari 2600 this way, and you'll see a bunch of switches on the back. Let me get it in the light so you can see. Now, they are the same color as the console, but they're still pretty easy to read. Now I got the flashlight on so you can see the text up here. Now you want to actually take a gander at your Atari 2600 and look at it. And look at these. You have several switches and stuff up here, and one of them is the important one, channel 2 or 3. Depending on which side, it's either channel 2 or channel 3. Now, your VCR should have something pretty similar to that if it doesn't automatically choose channel 3. Now we're at this part. Now, if you have a coaxial, if you use coaxial or you plugged in the Atari straight into the coaxial port here, you're going to have to modify a setting. But if you're using a VCR to play through AVI, you won't have to mess with the setting. But we're going to mess with the setting to show you. As you can see, it automatically chooses channel 3 for me. My VCR can either choose channel 3 or channel 4, which doesn't matter. But you will not typically see it do that. Now, how do you fix that? As you can see, the only one is channel 3. So how do you fix it if it says, hey, go to the setup? Well, just do what it says, go to the setup. Which for me would be menu, and then go all the way to channel, and select cable, and do an auto scan. Now this is a pretty long process because it has to check everything, but just do that auto scan, and it should see it if it's on. Yeah, you're gonna have to plug a game in here. But again, I already did that, so you shouldn't have to worry about it. And most people won't usually be using coaxial anyway. This is just if you want to use coaxial. But if you have AV, you just go to AV. So while we're on here, you want to switch it to the channel. As you can see here, we are now on channel 3. Now you want to plug in the Atari game of your choosing. This is one of the cheapest Atari games. If you want to know how cheap, a complete in-box copy is $10 cheap. I'm not joking. I spent $10 on a complete in-box copy of Combat. That's how cheap this game is. If you actually want to know how cheap it is, the copy of Combat that I own, the one with the text label, there's 2 different versions of Combat, but the one with the text label, supposedly a brand new copy, never opened, still sealed, is $20. That's how cheap this game is. That's how mass-produced this game is. That a brand new, never been opened copy is $20. Now, sadly, no one's selling a brand new copy of this game, so I can't check it, but that is just so funny to me, that it is $20 for a brand new, unopened 1970s game. Again, this is the text-only copy, which is the one that I have. There's a separate copy where the cartridge actually has a picture of the box art, and that one's slightly more expensive, like $2 more expensive, but brand new copies are like $80. So I'm not talking about that one. Go to your local thrift store. Not a Goodwill, but just go to your local thrift store. You will find like 5 copies of this. Now you want to plug it in into the console with this facing like this. I shouldn't have to tell you this. At this point, you should know what you're doing. And once you did everything correctly, you switch it on. And there you go. You are now playing Atari. And now you are experiencing one of the most boring single-player games of all time. Now you're probably wondering, what happens if we switch it to TV while the game's running? I don't know. I want to see what happens to... Oh. Okay, I thought something cool was going to happen. But yeah, there you go. That is how you get the authentic experience of using the original cables and not using an adapter for the Atari 2600. Now, is this a waste of time? Yes, it is. Just buy the fucking adapter at this point. Like, if you bought the console, you most likely have an adapter. I mean, these aren't too hard to come by. And the cable's long enough, so you don't even need to get like an extension coaxial. It's just really just a kind of like waste of money if you buy this and you don't buy this small ass adapter you could probably get from like Walmart for like 30 cents or something. I don't fucking know. Now, there is a really big annoying thing about the Atari 2600, that being what the fucking games look like. So, you know, you'll have your typicals. You know, this is what a typical Atari 2600 game looks like. You know, you have the label looking like this, and the front looking like this. But sometimes Atari games like to get fucking weird with it. So, I shit you not, you can get games that look like this, or this. What the fuck happened here? Yeah. iMagic was pretty bad about these specific types of cartridges. These are annoying to put on a shelf as it's pretty hard to see what the label is. because while it's on the shelf with other games in front of it, yeah, it's not very easy to read the label now, is it? And also, I would personally recommend Demon Attack if you ever get an Atari 2600. This game is actually kind of boss. And we also have Donkey Kong. This is an ugly-ass cartridge, not gonna lie. It's pretty cool, though, I guess. And then you have whatever the fuck Lock and Chase is. There's like 4 different versions of this cartridge, and it's weird to me. And this is, I think, the most common one. You can find a complete in-box copy of this game for, I think, around $10 as well. But yeah, Lock and Chase. By the way, this is literally just a Pac-Man knockoff, but like slightly better. Now, there is another thing you want to note about Atari 2600 games. That is, don't forget you're dealing with old games. These things fall apart. The most common place for it to fall apart is the end label. Sometimes it's legitimately hard finding a copy of a Atari game that you want that has the end label without just going onto eBay. And another thing is the main label has a chance of falling apart. I think specifically this Video Olympics, while I was peeling off the sticker, yeah, as you can see here, don't forget this is like decades of glue wearing off. Yeah, this is what happens when you deal with old games. And for that matter, old cheap games. Like, these weren't cheap, but they were made cheap. Also, if I give my personal recommendations to some Atari 2600 games, Yars' Revenge, Demon Attack, Pac-Man, Lock and Chase if you want Pac-Man but different, and Donkey Kong. These are the best games you could possibly get for the Atari 2600. And they're also not that expensive either. But, you know, these are still pretty cool games to have. All of them are actually worth it, and all of them are still pretty fun to play today. And, come on, Pac-Man, obviously. But also, Demon Attack is just a fun high-score game. And Yars' Revenge and Donkey Kong, like, come on. Classics.